Good afternoon, Summa scholars. Oops, I forgot the mic again. But the the iPhone is so swank that it usually doesn't matter all that much. But anyway, good afternoon, Summa scholars. Here we are on Mardi Gras. Too bad I'm not in New Orleans, or I'd be doing this with the backdrop of the French Quarter going behind it. But it is spring enough outside, and there's a lot of people out there, and some music pumping as we go by, so you might hear a little something. But it's probably just going to seem like any other day. But I tell you what, it's not any other day. It's Mardi Gras. I've got some food that I need to take care of in the fridge that's got to get out before the big fast starts tomorrow. And I bought a little something to wet my whistle for today. And we're going to listen to some Olympian Dijon, New Orleans band going down to New Orleans. Going to see that Mardi Gras, that whole parade. And we're going to have a good old night and wake up ready to begin the big fast. But right now, we're just going to begin the Summa Theologica Daily Summa, question 25, article 5, whether God can do what he does not. Whether God can do what he does not. We ended off with the objection 3, and I still haven't looked up what the name of this dude is that I said it was on this Beaver Galleon we're on. But we'll figure it out as we go. Well, we did the final question, so let's just go straight into the on the contrary. And here we go. It is said, thinkest thou that I can ask my Father, and he will give me presently more than 12 legions of angels, Matthew 26, but he neither asked for them, nor did his Father show them to refute the Jews. Therefore, God can do what he does not. By the way, I should just use this as an opportunity when Thomas says the Jews. Our present generation is so twisted, so depraved, so negative in the mindset that when you hear Thomas say the Jews, somehow you put on it mud and connotation of negativity. But you probably don't know this, but rabbis, when they're speaking, I mean, you can see them present day, when they're speaking, and they refer to what happened in Egypt, let's say, and the crossing of the Red Sea. Sometimes they'll say, God took us across the Red Sea, or God did this to us, but often they'll say the Jews, even though they are wearing payas and black coats and they're very much Jewish. They say the Jews. That's just a term that's used to refer to, wait for it, the Jews. So all the negativity is actually inside of you, not inside of the word. But anyway, he asked for them, nor did his Father show them to refute the Jews. Therefore, God can do what he does not. Here is the respondio, the logical answer to whether God can do what he does not do, whether he can do what he does not do. In this matter, certain persons erred in two ways. Now, Thomas is going to talk about some errors that people had in this question. Certain people erred in two ways. Some laid it down that God acts from natural necessity in such way that as from the action of nature, nothing else can happen beyond what actually takes place. As, for instance, from the seed of a man must come, and from an olive. So from the divine operation, there could not result other things, nor another order of things than that which now is. But we showed above in question 19, article 3, that God does not act from natural necessity, but that his will is the cause of all things, nor is that will naturally and from any necessity determined to those things. He's referring back to question 19. Whence in no way at all in the present course of events produced by God from any necessity is the present course produced by any necessity, so that other things could not happen. Others, however, said, this isn't the second thing that other people said that Thomas is going to disagree with. Others, however, said that the divine power is restricted to this present course of events through the order of the divine wisdom and justice, without which God does nothing. But since the power of God, which is his essence, is nothing else but his wisdom, it can indeed be fittingly said that there is nothing in the divine power which is not in the order of the divine wisdom. For the divine wisdom includes the whole potency of the divine power. Yet, interesting that he used that word. The divine wisdom includes the whole potency of the divine power. Potency in our realm. There is no potency in God. He is pure act. Yet the order placed in creation by divine wisdom, in which order the notion of his justice consists, as said above in question 21, article 2, is not so adequate to the divine wisdom that the divine wisdom should be restricted to this present order of things. The divine wisdom is not restricted. Again, this is the daily Summa. We could go in a lot more detail about all of these things. And it's very tempting to, especially in regards to this question, in the many ways in which it could be read. And as I've said before, nowadays we're kind of trained to think in other world possibilities, either by fiction or stories or listening to people talk about quantum physics and whatever. We're kind of queued up to think of different potentials. I'm not sure that that's what he's saying. I think that he's answering questions as from his time, 1200s, and the objections that we see here, which is in reference to this present life that we're watching. Could God do things other than he's doing? And some are saying, no, he can't. He's stuck in this rut of what is happening, sort of like a movie once it's produced is stuck as being that movie. And Thomas is saying, no, God can do other than what he did. Now it is clear that the whole idea of order which a wise man puts into things made by him is taken from their end. The whole order of what a person does is directed towards its end, its goal. So like if somebody's making a pool table and they put holes in both corners and the side pocket, they did that not just because it looks good. They did that not just because it's interesting. They did that not by accident, but they did that with the purpose of the goal, which is having a game in which there are these 6 pockets and you have certain rules to knock them into the pockets and have fun with your friends and grow in relationship. That is the goal. So when the end is proportionate to the things made for that end, the wisdom of the maker is restricted to some definite order, the holes in the pockets to that order. Now, he could be making a cribbage board, I don't know, or he could be making some other game. You can make a foosball table in which you'd only put 2 holes in the end and construct it completely differently. Or what I said about chess the other day and why it's an absurd question to say, can God beat someone in chess if he only has the king and they have all the pieces? Because it's the nature of the game is certain rules, and that's the end to which that game is made. If he made another game, then he could make another rules. And then that brings up Alex O'Connor's question about could God make a world in which murder was okay, or doing horrible things to other people, innocent people, is okay. But remember, everything is directed towards the end. So let's just, I wasn't going to go into it, but I'll just say, think about it. The end of this life is that we should be deified and enter into the life of God, which is pure kenosis, self-giving love without gross attachment. That's what God is. So if he made another world, he would still, because of the nature of love is to want to draw all things to yourself and to have communion. If he made personal beings in this other world, it would still be the end, because he would still be himself. So the end would still be towards self-giving love without gross attachment and grasping. Therefore, there is no world that could be made in which murder is okay or doing horrible things to innocent people is okay, because the end is God's divine life and God. You would have to have some other reality, which is patently absurd, given the definition of God as we have understood it. But the divine goodness, I continue, but the divine goodness is an end exceeding beyond all proportion things created. Whence the divine wisdom is not so restricted to any particular order that no other course of events could happen. Wherefore, we must simply say that God can do other things than those he has done. That was a lot of wind just to say that God can do whatever he wants, and we already know this. But as we've said before, in the daily Summa, we are staring upon the face of our beloved. We're taking a little pause in our doom scrolling in our day to just pause and follow a large logical argument and train our minds to hear these concepts and be more and more attuned to them and perhaps have some questions. We want new questions, new dark spaces to explore, not to be mama bird fed all the answers. We're wanting to understand wonder and questions. All right, Thomas is going to reply to objection 1. In ourselves, in whom power and essence are distinct from will and intellect, and again, intellect from wisdom and will from justice, there can be something in the power which is not in the just will nor in the wise intellect. We can do stuff that is even against, as St. Paul said, that which I will to do, I don't do; that which I will not to do, that I do. O wretched man that I am. I continue. But in God, power and essence, will and intellect, wisdom and justice are one and the same. Adonai Echad. God is one. Whence, therefore, can be nothing in the divine power which cannot also be in his just will or in his wise intellect. Nevertheless, because his will cannot be determined from necessity to this or that order of things, except upon supposition, as was said above in questions 19, Article 3, neither are the wisdom and justice of God restricted to this present order, as was shown above. So nothing prevents there being something in the divine power which he does not will, and which is not included in the order which he has placed in things. Again, because power is considered as executing, the will as commanding, and the intellect and wisdom as directing. What is attributed to his power considered in himself, God is said to be able to do in accordance with his absolute power. He can do that which he wills and that which he sees. It's one and the same thing, because it's all in the Logos, the mind of God. The divine Logos, whom he loves and loves him, and that love spirates Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. Blessed be he. Of such a kind is everything which has the nature of being, as was said above, Article 3. What is, however, attributed to the divine power, according as it carries into execution the command of a just will, God is said to be able to do by his ordinary power. In this manner, we must say that God can do other things by his absolute power than those he has foreknown and preordained he would do. But it could not happen that he should do anything which he had not foreknown and had not preordained which he would do, because his actual doing is subject to his foreknowledge and preordination through his power, which is his nature. Which is his nature is not so. Looks like I got lost, guys. It happens occasionally. Let's rewind. But it could not happen that he should do anything which he had not foreknown. But it could not happen, and is not so. But it could not happen that he should do anything which he had not foreknown and had not preordained that he would do, because his actual doing is subject to his foreknowledge and preordination, though his power, which is his nature, is not so, is not so. That is a very difficult sentence. Oh, okay. So his doing is not subject to his foreknowledge and preordination. The foreknowledge and preordination is part of his all-knowing and eternal will, which is all one and the same in God. So it's like the questions that were given before about foreknowledge, whether his foreknowledge locks things into place. Because if you put it that way, then foreknowledge would be God. Foreknowledge would be the power that moves things. And Thomas is trying to get us to see that that's not the case, that God's will and his love and his being exist. They are. And we call that, from our human perspective, foreknowledge, that he knows beforehand. But it's still taking heavily into account our way of looking at things. Because with God, there isn't foreknowledge, it's just knowledge, being. He is being itself and all knowledge, working as one loving communion of the economy of the Blessed Trinity. For God does things because he wills so to do, yet the power to do them does not come from his will, but from his nature. Everything we are experiencing in this life is, well, sparks of his nature. There are also emptinesses in which we don't see the fullness of his nature, and that makes our life possible here on this earth, that we can make choices and such. That's what this whole messed up opera that we're involved in with is for. So that everything might not be moved perfectly by God, but that he could draw back and let us have free will, which is immediately going to make some things not be perfect because it's not him. And that imperfection will be sometimes moral and end up in pain and suffering. Don't like it any more than you do, folks. That's where we are. Reply to objection 2. God is bound to nobody but himself. Hence, When it is said that God can only do what he ought, nothing else is meant by this than that God can do nothing but what is befitting to himself and just. Trying to hedge against I thought of people hearing that word ought and thinking God's hand is forced in some way. He is the great ought. His will is complete good and love. But these words, befitting and just, may be understood in two ways. One, in direct connection with the verb is, and thus they would be restricted to the present order of things and would concern his power. Then what is said in the object is false, for the sense is that God can do nothing except what is now fitting and just. If, however, they be joined directly with the verb can, which has the effect of extending the meaning, and then second with is, the present will be signified, but in a confused and general way. The sentence would then be true in this sense: God can do anything except that which, if he did it, would be suitable and just. God cannot do anything except that which, if he did it, would be suitable and just. Why is this tripping me up so much today? Probably because I'm so excited for Mardi Gras. God cannot do anything except that which, if he did it, would be suitable and just. Okay, I see what he's saying. God's only going to act suitably and justly, which is according to his divine being. Reply to objection 3. Although the order of things be restricted to what now exists, the divine power and wisdom are not thus restricted. Whence, although no other order can be suitable and good to the things which now are, yet God can do other things and impose upon them other orders. I've had in my mind since this began that scripture, which is very interesting in regards to this, where Jesus says, God could bring sons of Abraham up. You boast that you're sons of Abraham. God could bring up sons of Abraham from these rocks. That is something where we could go into deeper questions on this page. But again, as we've said before, that is not the purview of the Daily Summa. The Daily Summa is a catechesis for beginners, simple stuff. I just want to put things in your mind, the possible questions to talk about with your spouse and loved ones or whoever. Talk about with yourself as you stare out at the lake and celebrate, or stare out at the Mardi Gras parade today. Let's go to the first little part of objection, Article 6, and finish off this page, and we'll be done for the day and ready to hit down the Mardi Gras celebration. Getting ready for Lent. Keep your mind on the fast, folks. It's coming. Article 6, whether God can do better than what he does. It seems that God cannot do better than he does. For whatever God does, he does in a most powerful and wise way. But a thing is so much the better done as it is more powerfully and wisely done. Therefore, God cannot do anything better than he does. And again, we're feeding on these previous questions in which Thomas was very clear to say that God gives what we now pretty much call permissive will. He allows things to not be to the most perfect along the way so that a greater good may be achieved. All right, objection 2. Further, Augustine thus argues, if God could, but would not, beget a son, his equal, he would have been envious. For the same reason, boop, that's the end of the sentence. We'll finish it off tomorrow, guys. Listen, it's Mardi Gras. Go down, eat the rest of that food, drink the rest of that drink, and let's move into the desert tomorrow. Peace be with all of you.